15 R&B stars who died of AIDS. What if I told you that behind those velvet voices and timeless R&B melodies were stories the world tried to erase? Stories of pain, silence, and strength. At the height of their fame, these artists poured their souls into every note, moving millions with songs about love, heartbreak, and hope. But when the music stopped and the crowds went home, many faced a private battle, a fight against a virus shrouded in fear, stigma, and denial. Some were legends whose names lit up charts. Others were rising stars whose promise was stolen too soon. Together, they remind us that behind every hit song was a human heart fighting to live. These are the 15 R&B icons whose lives were tragically cut short by AIDS. Their voices may have faded, but their courage, their artistry, and their legacy will echo through time. Jermaine Stewart. Jermaine Stewart wasn't just another voice in the world of R&B and pop. He was a burst of color, rhythm, and joy in an era that desperately needed it. His 1986 hit, "We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off," wasn't just a catchy tune. It was an anthem of self-respect wrapped in irresistible groove. With every note, Jermaine celebrated innocence, fun, and confidence at a time when the music scene was soaked in sensuality. Born on September 7, 1957, he began his journey as a backup dancer and vocalist for Shalimar before stepping into the spotlight on his own. With his silky voice, playful energy, and magnetic stage presence, Jermaine became one of the most distinctive performers of the 1980s. But behind the flashing lights and chart-topping hits, a silent battle was being waged. Jermaine was diagnosed with AIDS, a fight he faced with quiet courage and grace. On March 17, 1997, the world lost him to AIDS-related liver cancer at just 39 years old. His passing was a painful echo of an epidemic that stole far too many voices too soon. Yet his spirit still dances through every lyric and every beat of his music, a timeless reminder of joy, dignity, and the fleeting brilliance of a life that shined far too bright to last long. Frankie Knuckles. Frankie Knuckles wasn't just a DJ. He was the heartbeat of a movement. Known around the world as the godfather of house music, he turned turntables into instruments of liberation and dance floors into temples of freedom. Born on January 18, 1955, in New York, Knuckles began spinning records long before he redefined Chicago's nightlife. In the early 1980s, he sparked a cultural revolution, fusing the emotion of soul and R&B with the pulse of electronic beats to create something entirely new: house music. His sets didn't just make people dance, they made them feel alive. Under his command, the clubs became sacred spaces of unity, love, and release. But behind the flashing lights and endless rhythm, Knuckles was quietly fighting his own battles. Years of struggling with diabetes and complications related to HIV began to take their toll. On March 31, 2014, the music world lost a legend. Yet even in death, Frankie's spirit never stopped spinning. His influence still echoes through every modern R&B groove, every electronic drop, every beat that makes a crowd move as one. Frankie Knuckles didn't just make music. He built a legacy that still vibrates in the soul of the world. Kenny Green. Kenny Green, a voice that could move hearts and break barriers. Born on February 17, 1969, he was the powerhouse lead vocalist and chief songwriter of the R&B group Intro, who soared to fame in the early 90s with timeless hits like Come Inside and Love Tang. His voice wasn't just smooth, it was soul incarnate, rich, emotional, and deeply human. Kenny had that rare gift of weaving silky melodies with raw truth, turning every lyric into something you could feel in your bones. But Kenny's story went far beyond the music. In the late 1990s, at a time when silence and stigma surrounded HIV, he did the unthinkable. He spoke out. Kenny revealed that he was HIV positive, shattering walls of fear and shame in an industry that often looked the other way. His courage gave voice to countless others suffering in silence, transforming his pain into purpose. On October 1, 2001, Kenny Green's life was tragically cut short by AIDS-related complications. Yet, even in death, his music lives on, a lasting echo of truth, vulnerability, and strength. Kenny Green may have left the stage too soon, but his spirit still sings through every note, every lyric, and every heart he ever touched. Arthur Russell. Arthur Russell wasn't just a musician. He was a visionary who refused to be confined by labels or genres. An avant-garde cellist, composer, and singer, Russell blurred the lines between R&B, disco, folk, and experimental sound, creating music that felt like it came from another world. Intimate, emotional, and endlessly original. Born on May 21st, 1951, in Iowa, he eventually found his home in New York City's vibrant downtown scene of the 1970s and 80s. There, amid the chaos and creativity, he became a quiet force of innovation. With his tender, almost fragile voice and fearless approach to composition, Russell built a devoted cult following. People who sensed his genius long before the rest of the world caught on. His music lived in a delicate balance between vulnerability and experimentation. Heartfelt R&B melodies floating above shimmering, unconventional soundscapes. Yet behind his brilliance, Russell battled private demons and deteriorating health. As he struggled with HIV, the world lost him far too soon on April 4th, 1992. But even in death, Arthur Russell's light refused to fade. Posthumous releases of his recordings revealed the full depth of his artistry, inspiring a new generation of musicians. Today, he stands as one of music's most influential hidden treasures, a restless pioneer whose spirit still echoes across every genre that dares to dream differently. Patrick Cowley. Patrick Cowley wasn't just a musician. He was a pioneer who redefined the sound of the future. Born on October 19th, 1950, in San Francisco, Cowley became a wizard of synthesizers and drum machines, crafting pulsating, futuristic rhythms that fused seamlessly with R&B and disco. His visionary collaborations with Sylvester gave birth to timeless anthems like You Make Me Feel, Mighty Real, songs that electrified dance floors and captured the spirit of liberation and joy that defined an era. As a solo artist, Cowley pushed boundaries even further. His 1981 album Megatron Man showcased his fearless use of sequencers and electronic textures, proving he was not just ahead of his time, but shaping what was to come. His groundbreaking sound would later inspire the rise of house, techno, and modern electronic music. But behind the brilliance lay a tragedy that came far too soon. On November 12, 1982, Patrick Cowley passed away at just 32, becoming one of the first major artists lost to AIDS-related complications. Though his life was brief, his influence remains eternal, alive in every beat, every rhythm, and every dance floor that still pulses to the music he helped create. The Dynamic Superiors. The story of the Dynamic Superiors was far from ordinary. Once an NFL player, he swapped the roar of the stadium for the rhythm of the stage, transforming himself into a gospel and R&B sensation. What he brought to music was extraordinary, a rare mix of athletic discipline, raw emotion, and a voice powerful enough to lift souls and stir hearts. Little is known about his early life or his football career, but by the 1980s and 1990s, Washington had carved his place in the spotlight. His electrifying performances merged the uplifting spirit of gospel with the smooth allure of R&B, creating songs that spoke of faith, hope, and perseverance. Each note carried the weight of his devotion, a reflection of a man whose artistry was born from both triumph and struggle. Yet behind the music lay a quiet battle. Later in life, Washington revealed he was HIV positive. Complications from AIDS eventually silenced his voice, cutting short a journey filled with purpose and passion. His story stands as a powerful reminder of the countless lives touched by the AIDS crisis, and how faith, music, and resilience can forge a legacy that continues to echo long after the final note fades. David Cole, the beat that moved the world. David Cole wasn't just a producer. He was a musical storm that reshaped the sound of a generation. Born on October 3, 1962, he rose to fame as one half of the explosive duo C plus C Music Factory, the powerhouse that defined the rhythm of the early 90s. With his unmatched ear for melody and fearless fusion of house, hip-hop, R&B, and pop, Cole helped create a sound so electrifying it shook both nightclubs and radio airwaves around the world. Alongside Robert Clivels, he delivered timeless anthems like Gonna Make You Sweat, Everybody Dance Now, songs that didn't just dominate charts but became cultural phenomena. Every bass drop, every soaring hook carried Cole's unmistakable signature. Behind the flashing lights and roaring crowds, he was the creative heartbeat of C plus C Music Factory, the quiet genius who turned rhythm into revolution. But at the very height of his success, tragedy struck. On January 24, 1995, David Cole passed away at just 32 years old from spinal meningitis brought on by AIDS. His death was more than a personal loss. It was the end of an era, the silencing of a sound that once made the whole world dance. David Cole's music remains eternal, echoing through every beat that dares to make us move. Howard Rollins, a star dimmed too soon. Howard Rollins, born on October 17, 1950, wasn't just an actor. He was a force of nature. With a voice that commanded attention and eyes that spoke volumes, he brought life to every character he portrayed. From his powerful role in the Oscar-nominated A Soldier's Story to his unforgettable presence in the hit TV drama In the Heat of the Night, Rollins delivered performances that were raw, human, and deeply moving. His ability to embody complex emotions made him one of the most gifted talents of his generation. Hollywood saw in him a rising star, an Academy Award nominee destined for greatness. But behind the lights and applause, Howard was fighting battles that no script could prepare him for. Addiction cast a shadow over his brilliance, leading him down a painful path of struggle and recovery. In 1996, another cruel twist came. Rollins was diagnosed with AIDS-related lymphoma, a devastating form of cancer linked to HIV. Just weeks later, on December 8th, the curtain fell for the final time. He was only 46. For a while, his family kept his illness private, but when the truth came out, it revealed yet another soul loss to the epidemic that had already taken so many artists, dreamers, and visionaries. Howard Rollins' life was both a triumph and a tragedy. The story of a man whose talent burned brightly, but whose time was heartbreakingly short. His legacy reminds us of the beauty of true artistry and the fragility of those who give their all to it. Joe Bryant, born Bruce Wayne Campbell on December 14, 1946, Joe Bryant was more than a glam rock artist. He was a revolution wrapped in glitter and soul. With a voice that could soar from raw emotion to electrifying power, and a stage presence that shimmered with fearless flamboyance, he pushed boundaries few dared to touch. In the early 1970s, when the world still whispered about what it feared to understand, Joe Bryant stepped into the spotlight as one of the first openly gay rock musicians ever signed to a major label. His self-titled debut album wasn't just music, it was a statement. A bold fusion of glam rock's dazzling theatrics, R&B's sensual rhythm, and pop's magnetic charm. He was ahead of his time, but the industry wasn't ready for someone so unapologetically himself. Despite his brilliance, Joe faced rejection, silence, and misunderstanding from a world that loved his talent but feared his truth. Tragically, his journey ended too soon. On August 3, 1983, at just 36 years old, Joe Bryant became one of the first well-known musicians to die of AIDS. His passing didn't just end a life. It marked the loss of voice that had dared to be different. Today, his legacy stands as a powerful reminder of courage, authenticity, and the price so many artists paid for simply being who they were. Ronald Winans, the soul behind the song. Ronald Ron Winans was more than just a singer. He was the beating heart of the legendary Winans family, a gospel and R&B dynasty that redefined the sound of modern gospel. Born on June 30, 1956, Ronald carried a voice that could move mountains, rich, soulful, and filled with faith. Alongside his siblings, he helped bridge the sacred and the secular, blending the church's spiritual fire with the smooth rhythms of contemporary R&B. The Winans didn't just sing about God. They made his message resonate through radio waves and concert halls, touching souls far beyond the pews. Yet behind the music, Ronald fought quiet battles. In his later years, his health began to fail, with reports suggesting complications related to HIV/AIDS, a devastating reminder that even within the gospel world, no one was untouched by the epidemic's reach. On April 17, 2005, Ronald Winans passed away, leaving behind a legacy that still echoes in every harmony the family sings. His voice was a vessel of hope, pain, and unshakable faith, a reminder that gospel isn't just music, it's a testimony. Today, Ronald's spirit lives on in the timeless songs of the Winans family, inspiring generations to lift their voices higher and believe a little deeper. Essex Hemphill. Essex Hemphill. He wasn't just a poet. He was a revolutionary voice that refused to be silenced. Born on April 16, 1957, in Chicago and raised in Washington, D.C., Hemphill carved out a fearless space where art, truth, and defiance met. Through his words, he gave breath to the untold stories of black gay men, stories the world often ignored or erased. His poetry was raw, unapologetic, and burning with truth. In the 1980s and 90s, Hemphill became a beacon of the black queer arts movement. His voice echoed far beyond the page, shaping landmark films like Tongues Untied and Looking for Langston, cinematic testaments to the beauty, pain, and resilience of black queer life. He confronted homophobia in his own community and racism within the LGBTQ+ world, with words that cut through silence like lightning. In 1994, Hemphill shared a hauntingly personal revelation through his poem Vital Signs, acknowledging his own battle with AIDS, a struggle he rarely spoke of publicly. The disease claimed his body, but never his spirit. On November 4, 1995, at just 38 years old, Essex Hemphill passed away from AIDS-related complications. Yet his fire never went out. His poetry, his courage, and his uncompromising honesty continue to inspire generations to live loudly, love boldly, and never let their voices be erased. Julius Eastman. Julius Eastman was more than just a composer. He was a revolutionary spirit wrapped in sound. Born in 1940, he refused to be confined by genre, expectation, or identity. His music was a force of nature, blending the soul of gospel, the rhythm of R&B, and the precision of classical composition into something bold, raw, and unapologetically original. Each note he wrote carried both rebellion and reverence, a deep spiritual pulse that dared the listener to feel, not just hear. In the avant-garde scene of the 1970s and 80s, Eastman wasn't just different, he was defiant. As a black gay man in a predominantly white, conservative art world, he used his music as both a mirror and a weapon, confronting race, sexuality, and identity with fearless honesty. But behind the brilliance was pain. Poverty and isolation followed him, and his life ended far too soon in 1990, at just 49 after a battle with AIDS. Yet death couldn't silence him. Decades later, the world rediscovered his genius. His work revived, his name finally honored. Today, Julius Eastman's music burns brighter than ever, echoing through a new generation of artists who, like him, refuse to play by the rules and choose instead to redefine what music and courage can sound like. Eazy-E, the godfather of West Coast reality. Ezric Lindright, better known to the world as Eazy-E, wasn't just a rapper, he was a movement. A fearless trailblazer who built the very foundation of West Coast gangster rap, shaping a sound that would forever transform both hip-hop and R&B. Born and raised in the unforgiving streets of Compton, California, Eazy joined forces with Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, MC Run, and DJ Yella to form NWA in 1986. Together, they detonated a cultural explosion with Straight Outta Compton, an album that ripped the mask off mainstream music and exposed the raw, unfiltered truth of life in America's inner cities. Their brutal honesty, rebellious energy, and explosive beats didn't just redefine rap. They changed music forever. Eazy's voice was unmistakable, that high-pitched, razor-sharp delivery that sliced through every track like a siren in the night. But beyond the mic, he proved to be just as powerful. Through his label, Ruthless Records, he helped launch careers of future legends like Bone Thugs-n-Harmony, cementing his place not only as an artist, but as a visionary architect of the culture. Then came the tragedy no one saw coming. In February 1995, the hip-hop world was shaken when Eazy revealed he had been diagnosed with AIDS. Only weeks later, at just 30 years old, he was gone. His death was more than a loss. It was a reckoning. It forced the world to face the harsh realities of HIV and the deadly silence that surrounded it, especially in the Black community. Eazy-E's legacy didn't die with him. It lives on, in the beats, in the rebellion, and in every artist who dares to tell the truth. He wasn't just the godfather of gangsta rap. He was the voice that made the world listen. Willie Ninja. Willie Ninja wasn't just a dancer. He was a revolution in motion. Crowned the godfather of voguing, he became the heartbeat of a movement that rose from the African-American and Latino LGBTQ+ ballroom scene in New York City. With razor-sharp lines, fierce precision, and an elegance that could slice through silence, Willie transformed voguing into a global art form. His body spoke where words could not. Each pose, each spin, a declaration of freedom, pride, and identity. In the 1980s and 1990s, his unique fusion of rhythm and style helped shape the evolution of R&B and house music, leaving an indelible mark on both genres. The groundbreaking documentary Paris is Burning immortalized his genius, while collaborations with icons like Malcolm McLaren and his work in high fashion elevated him from underground legend to international cultural bridge. Willie embodied grace, confidence, and unapologetic authenticity, qualities that would go on to inspire generations of performers, from music videos to the world's biggest stages. Yet behind the glitter and glory was a life touched by tragedy. In 2006, the world lost Willie Ninja to complications from AIDS, a heartbreaking end for a man who gave so much voice and beauty to those once silenced. Still, his legacy lives on in every snap, twirl, and fierce gaze that dares to be seen. Wayne Cooper. Wayne Cooper's voice wasn't just powerful, it was unforgettable. With his soaring falsetto and soulful energy, he helped define the sound of Cameo, the funk and R&B powerhouse that lit up the late 1970s and early 80s. Born in the United States, Wayne carved his own lane in music history, blending funk, soul, and emotion into something electric. His voice shimmered through classics like Word Up and Candy, giving every lyric a pulse, every beat a heartbeat. But behind that brilliance was a fragile truth. In 1984, at the height of his talent, Wayne's light was dimmed far too soon, claimed by complications from AIDS during one of the darkest chapters in music history. His passing wasn't just a loss for the band. It was a heartbreak that rippled through the entire R&B and funk world, taking from us one of its most radiant voices. Yet even in silence, Wayne Cooper's falsetto still echoes. It lives in every Cameo groove, in every fan who still feels that spark when his notes soar. His music reminds us that legends never really die, they just change form, living on in sound and memory. If this story moved you, don't let it fade away. Drop a comment below. Tell us which artist left their mark on your soul. Hit like if you learned something new, and subscribe for more untold stories that keep the spirit of music alive.